For anyone studying for the PMP or new to project management, or even just wanting to brush up on their project management skills, you'll probably come across the Process Groups Practice Guide from the Project Management Institute, which is actually an updated version of the Project Management Body of Knowledge 6th edition. Now there's a 7th edition now, which is gone in a completely different direction, but they've morphed this into the Process Groups Practice Guide. Now, this is one of the most valuable things you could ever have as a project manager because it is a series of steps and process steps from start to finish on how to run your project. And what better way to learn a book and go through a book than to actually create a mind map or a work breakdown structure of the inner workings of this particular book. This is what we're going to do now, and it's going to really help you absorb the Process Groups Practice Guide and take your project management to the next level. As with any good mind map or work breakdown structure, we're going to start at a very high level ideas, and then we're going to get more detailed and then more detailed and then more detailed again. It's a wonderful way to learn. Let's get into it. The first thing you'll notice there are two sections, a project management overview, just so we understand the lay of the land, and then the process itself. For the project management overview, that's where we're going to start. We start with an overview of the project landscape, the project management environment, and the role of the project manager themselves. For the process, we start with initiating, planning a project, executing a project, monitoring and controlling a project, and then closing a project. Let's start at the beginning. Overview of projects. We start with the importance of project management. Now, it's important because without a project manager organizing all of the little bits and pieces, then they often scatter and things fall apart. Projects themselves drive change. We go from one state to the next state, hopefully adding business value as we go. A project is also a temporary endeavor. It has a start and an end, and it drives business value, so it drives that change. We also have projects, programs, and portfolios. The operational level is our business as usual, or BAU. Projects make a change, then multiple projects form a program, and then multiple programs form a portfolio, and that also encompasses the operations when we come down to it. Project life cycles and phases. This is where we've got our predictive, iterative, incremental, and adaptive, so agile and waterfall basically. And you've got your waterfall, which is your step-by-step requirements, analysis, design, coding, testing, and putting all of that into BAU or operations. So we choose the life cycle, the project life cycle that's going to fit our project the best. As we go along on our project management journey, we collect data and we refine that and turn that into meaningful information that we can share with executives and other project stakeholders. We want to tailor our project. Tailoring the project is very important because each project will be a little bit different. Managing benefits and project success measures, we want to start with the end in mind. So we really want to have an idea of where the project is going and the value that we're delivering. And we have a project charter to kick off our project and a project management plan to manage the project as we go along. Now, in the project management environment, there are two main things that you'll come across quite a lot, and that is the enterprise environmental factors, or EEFs, and organizational process assets, or OPAs. These are process assets that are within the organization, so processes, governance, templates, things like that. The environment that we're working in includes the way work gets done. So politics, maybe different products just have different ways of working. For example, you can create a car step by step, but a software product, you might need to do an iterative approach. So that's the environment that we're working in. Is it physical? Is it software or that sort of thing? These are all differences, and that's why we tailor our project. Organizational and project governance. So we do need to understand the organizational governance and how work gets done, and also the project governance and how the work gets done within the project. This includes management elements, so us as managers and managers within the organization, but also organizational structures. There are different ones here. So these range from a high level of influence, where the project manager has a high level of influence, to a low level of influence. And what we've got is a project management office or project-oriented organizational structure. The project manager has a high level of influence in these ones because it's all about the PMO and the projects. Then we've got a matrix, strong to weak organization. So strong, we still have a high level of influence, but as it gets weaker, then we have a low level of influence. We don't really do the budgeting. Maybe the budget is given to us by someone external, maybe the functional manager. And as we go down to the functional and organic, then functional managers are usually running the show, and they might be doing a small process improvement within their team. So that often they'll just have an ad hoc project manager or someone within their team doing it. There are different PMO types, project management organizations or offices, sorry. They might be directive, controlling, or supportive. Directive takes control over the whole thing. Controlling gives frameworks and ideas and ways of working and says operate within these frameworks. And supportive just gives templates and says, here are some ideas and you can use these if you really want to. We're here to support you. Now, what does the role of the project manager play within all of these things? We've got our own sphere of influence, so we can influence our own project team, but then there are governing bodies, there's the project management office, steering committees, and that's a little bit outside of our sphere of influence, but still within it. And then we've got our industry, suppliers, customers, and that's often outside of our sphere of influence, but we still need to negotiate and influence them using our own personal power. Project manager competencies that we'll need are power skills, so soft skills, business acumen, we need to understand the business that we're working in, and the ways of working, which is this particular process and the project management process groups. We'll also need the qualities and skills of a leader. There are different leadership types, from servant leadership to directive leadership to laissez-faire leadership, hands-off, all sorts of different ways. And performing integration is where we take all of these process steps and we integrate them all together and we become that binding glue for our project as the project manager. Now we get to go into the process, and we'll give a high-level overview here, and then, as I promised, with that work breakdown structure approach, we will get into the nitty-gritty of each one. So first we develop a project charter to kick off our project, and we identify all of the stakeholders that we need to work with. Then we create our project management plan, and this is part of that plan that keeps everything together. And in that plan, we want to plan our scope. So we gather that scope, collect the requirements, define the scope, and then create our work breakdown structure for all of that scope that we have elicited from our customers. Once we have that, we can start planning our schedule. We define the activities from the scope that we found, sequence those activities, put them into a nice sequence here using a schedule network diagram. Then we estimate the activity durations, so how long will each one take? And once we have all of those bits of information, we can develop the schedule and put those on a nice Gantt chart. Once we have our scope and our schedule, then we can look at the cost. So planning cost management, how are we going to work with cost on our project? Then we estimate the costs for all of those different activities and different parts of scope. And then we use that to determine the budget. Now there's a bit more to it than that, but we'll go into that a little bit later. Then we can plan quality. So how are we doing quality assurance or testing? Planning resource management. How are we getting people and who are we getting? We need to estimate the resources that we need. Planning communications management. How are we communicating with our customers and with our stakeholders? Planning risk management. We need to identify the risks, perform qualitative risk analysis, quantitative risk analysis, which is much more data heavy, and then plan the risk responses. How are we going to respond to those risks that we find that might impact our project? Planning procurement management is how we operate with vendors, and planning stakeholder engagement is how we keep our stakeholders engaged. Now, the rest of these processes at a high level is just the same knowledge groups, so scope, schedule, planning cost, quality, resources, communications, risk, procurement, and stakeholders. But now we're just executing and performing these tasks. We're directing and managing the project work. We're managing quality. We're acquiring the resources that we need, developing and managing our team. We're managing communications to make sure that the communications are effective, implementing risk responses as those risks come up, conducting procurements, getting those vendors on board, and managing our stakeholder engagement to keep our stakeholders engaged. And then we need to control our project and keep everything under control. The same deal. The main differences here are we have change control, which is a change management process. So how do we make sure that if there's a change in the scope that it's approved and it doesn't impact our project schedule, or it doesn't impact our project cost, or if it does, then that's approved. The other thing is validating scope. Is once we've created those deliverables and finished them, then they need to be signed off by whoever the customer is, usually a project sponsor or whoever is receiving that particular deliverable. The rest, we just monitor and control risks, quality, resources, procurements, and stakeholder engagement. And then when we're closing, we can close a project, or it could just be a project phase. And then we do all of this again for the next phase if we're working in an iterative method or an iterative way of work. Now, all of this, as you can see, we've got the first one all the way back at the beginning, developing project charter. This goes down another level again. So developing project charter in the process groups practice guide, we might have inputs to that particular process, the tools that we use for that particular process, and then the outputs. So what are we trying to get by doing develop project charter? And this is where the real gold lies. So if you've seen enough already at this point, then feel free to stop this video and leave. But if you want to get into the nitty-gritty of all of these inputs, tools, and outputs for each process, then continue watching and really get the goods for the rest of these processes. Let's see what we've got for develop project charter. The inputs, we need business documents. So we need a business case. So is it actually worth doing the project in the first place? We also need a benefits management plan because we need to know what the benefits for the project are going to be and how we're going to manage them. We might have agreements in the business already, and then enterprise environmental factors. What's the environment that we're working in? And organizational process assets. Is there a tool or technique or a template that is already existing for our project charter that we can use in the organization? The tools that we're going to use are expert judgment. We might need people from the industry who understand the product, so we're going to need their expertise. Data gathering, brainstorming with them, focus groups, interviews, making sure we're gathering all that data on the pros and cons of the project. Interpersonal and team skills, conflict management, maybe people have competing ideas, facilitation, facilitating those groups of people, and meeting management, and then meetings themselves. And the output that we're looking for is the project charter itself. So we're creating that project charter, getting it signed off with the project sponsor, and any assumptions that we've made along the way, let's include those as well. Now, the next one when we're initiating a project is identifying all the stakeholders that we're going to be working with. So to do that, we're going to need the project charter. That's going to have a high-level idea of the stakeholders, and business documents, the business case, and the benefits management plan will also have a nice idea. Project management plan, as we start to create that project management plan, we're going to have stakeholders in there so we can refer to that. We might need the communications management plan, stakeholder engagement plan. All of this will have ideas of the stakeholders that we're working with. And project documents, change log, issue log, requirements documentation, all of this will give us stakeholder ideas. Any prior agreements within the organization, and of course the environment and any templates that are already existing for identifying stakeholders. As always, we're going to need expert judgment from people within the business. Who knows who? Maybe we need them to give us an idea of the stakeholders that we need on our project. We need to gather data with questionnaires and surveys to identify stakeholders, stakeholder analysis and document analysis, and data representation. We need stakeholder mapping and representation. Now, I can't go into these in a lot of detail. For that, you have to check out my course on PMP, which will also give you 35 contact hours or PDUs, which is really, really fantastic. But just know that this is the level that it goes down to. And in that course, we actually go into and show what each of those particular items is. We're going to need meetings, and the output for identifying stakeholders is our stakeholder register with all of our stakeholders input into it. We might need change requests and project management plan updates as we update with new stakeholders, and project documents updates like assumptions, issues, or risk registers that have new stakeholders involved. Now we're going to move into the planning a project, and this is the biggest part of the Process Groups Practice Guide. For developing the project management plan, we're going to need the project charter. Now this needs to be signed off by the project sponsor. So is it approved to go ahead? Do we have the resources? Do we have the high level idea of the project and what's involved? Any output from other processes, so scope, schedule, all of these things, cost, that's going to go into our project management plan. And of course, the environment that we're working in, the industry or the organization, and any process templates or process assets that we might have that will give us a clue on how to create our project management plan. The tools and techniques, we're going to need expert judgment from people within the organization who know about the project and things that we might need for our project management plan. Data gathering, focus groups, checklists, interviews, and interpersonal and team skills, conflict management as we create our project management plan, and meetings to facilitate all of those things. The outputs are the project management plan itself, and we'll be updating this as our project goes along. Now, as we move through planning, we've got planning scope management. What we need for planning scope management is the project charter, the high-level scope in there, and the project management plan, and of course our environment and OPAs, our process assets for managing scope. Expert judgment as always, data analysis, and then of course meetings to tie all that together. And the outputs are our scope management plan, which is the process for how we're managing scope. And I have a great bunch of templates for scope management plan and the entire project management plan process actually pre-made with all of these little prompts for the process groups and how to do it step by step. So those are really, really wonderful. Check out the description if you want to get those ready-made, and it'll save you dozens and dozens of hours of doing it yourself. The requirements management plan is how we're going to manage the requirements. Now, once we've got the process set up, we want to collect the requirements themselves. We're going to need the project charter, so what are the high-level requirements, the project management plan, project documents, so stakeholders and assumptions, business documents, the business case will have high-level requirements already that we can use, any agreements within the business, and of course our enterprise environmental factors and OPAs for any templates and the environment that we're working in. Tools and techniques, people's expert judgment as always, data gathering, data analysis, decision making, data gathering, data representation, interpersonal and team skills, again to elicit all of those requirements and gather them from our stakeholders. We can use context diagrams to put these together, and prototypes, so mock-ups or storyboards or models, all of these things. And again, I can't go into all of those details at that level for this one, but in the PMP course, I certainly do, which is pretty cool if you want to check that out. Requirements documentation. So the output is the acceptance criteria for each of the items and the requirements that we're wanting to be delivered. And then a requirements traceability matrix. How have we got the requirements through to the deliverables, through to their test cases, through to the approvals and sign-offs, and we're tracking that from start to finish. Once we've got the requirements, we can start defining the scope that we're going to deliver in our project. And that looks like we start with our project charter, the project management plan, and project documents for any assumptions, and of course our environment and any process assets that will help us along the way. Tools and techniques, expert judgment from people within the business, as always, data analysis, so any alternatives for our scope, decision making, multi-criteria decision making, which is my favorite way to make decisions, by the way, and I've got wonderful templates for that if you want to check that out. We're going to need to facilitate all of these things and bring that together so that we can put that scope together for our project. And then product analysis, we want to analyze our product and figure out which direction it needs to go in. The outputs are our project scope statement, so that's just a high-level scope statement, and project documents, including the requirements documentation, and so we're sort of updating those things, updating stakeholders, and updating the requirements traceability matrix. As we plan, we're now creating the work breakdown structure, similar to what we're doing for the Process Groups Practice Guide. But for this, it's a project, and the inputs that we're going to need are the scope management plan to figure out the process on how we're doing what we're doing for scope, project documents, and requirements documentation. Of course, we're going to need our environment and any process assets to help us along the way. Tools and techniques, oh, surprise, surprise, it's expert judgment from people within the business, so we're going to need that. And of course, decomposition, which is decomposing these things into more detailed levels, similar to what we're doing with this particular exercise, which is really, really great. The scope baseline is our output, and project documents updates. Planning schedule, this is another great one. Now we've got the scope, we can move on to planning our schedule. The inputs that we're going to need for this are the project charter, so high-level milestones that we might have outlaid, the project management plan, and of course the environment that we're working in, and any assets or process assets that we have within the business that might help us plan our schedule, so the systems or tools that we might have. Expert judgment from people within the business, surprise, surprise, we're probably going to see this a lot by the looks of it. Analyzing data and meetings to tie it all together. And the output that we're looking for is to create our schedule management plan, which is the process for how we're going to manage our schedule. Once we've done that and we've got our process, we can start defining the activities. Now, can you guess what we're going to need as inputs for this? Well, first of all, the project management plan, so the schedule management plan and the scope baseline. This is the most important one because we're going to take that scope baseline and the work breakdown structure and the work packages, and we're going to need to turn those into activities. So we're going to use expert judgment. We're going to use decomposition because we're going to decompose those work packages into activities, so further. Rolling wave planning is something we can use. That's an agile technique. There's much more to it, but that's an idea. Meetings to tie it all together. And the outputs that we want are the list of activities themselves for the project. The activity attributes, so the resources, cost, and all of these things that we'll add as we go further and further through our project plan. The milestone list, just a high-level list of milestones that we're going to adhere to on our project. We might have change requests as we go along and project management plan updates. So the schedule baseline will be updated as we define the activities and change those activities. Once we have that list of activities, we want to put them in the right sequence. Exactly right. So to do that, what are we going to need? The project management plan, and we want the schedule management plan, our process, the scope baseline, and all of those activity lists and attributes, and of course the environment. So are we creating software, or are we creating a car or a chair or anything else, or a vacuum cleaner, all of these things. And of course the process assets. Do we have a way to sequence activities in the organization already that we can already use? Tools and techniques, the precedence diagramming method, dependency determination and integration, which activities are dependent on each other, leads and lags. And of course, we're going to need our project management information system. So that holds all of the project data that we're going to be working with. Project schedule network diagrams are things like the nodes. So if these are the activities, what is the sequence that we need to do these in? And then project updates, activity attributes, we might need to update those as we go along. Once we've got that activity list and we've put them in sequence, we need to estimate their durations. So how long are these activities going to take? It's very important for us to know this, even though it's just an estimate at this time. So we're going to need the project management plan, project documents, so all of these things, the activity list. Now, tools and techniques, we're going to need the expert judgment, as always, of people in the organization. But here are the estimating techniques, and these are absolutely my favorite. So analogous estimating, which is something similar to another feature or another project. It's an analogy. Parametric estimating, where it's, say, $1 per meter or $10 per hour. It's a parameter. 3-point estimating is optimistic, pessimistic, and most likely. And we get all those three together and we just divide it by 3. It's just an average, basically. And again, we go into that in all the detail in the project management professional course, but that's just one way to do it. Bottom-up estimating is gathering all of the work packages and then gathering them up to the next level, and then those levels to the next level until we have an overall project budget. We're going to need data analysis to do all of that, decision-making, and meetings, as always, to tie it all together. Now, the outputs that we're going to have are the duration estimates and the basis of estimates. So how do we come to those estimate decisions, and updating any activity attributes and assumptions that we've made along the way. Now that we've estimated those activity durations, we want to develop the overall schedule. So the things that we're going to need are our project management plan, project documents, agreements, and of course the environment and OPAs, as always. The tools and techniques that we're going to need are our schedule network analysis. So that's where everything, the sequence of where everything fits. The critical path method. So this is where we determine the critical path. So the shortest time that we can complete our project. Resource optimization, data analysis. So what if scenario analysis, leads and lags, again, bringing items, leading them forward or lagging behind. Schedule compression, so that's fast tracking or schedule crashing. Project management information system, where we house all of that data. And agile release planning, where we're planning for the next small increment in an agile project. The outputs that we're going to have are the schedule baseline itself, the project schedule data, and project calendars, change requests for the future if we need to make any changes, project management plan updates to our schedule management plan, and project documents updates. Now that we have our schedule, we can start planning cost, because we know what our scope is and how long it's going to take. Now we can get an idea for how much it's going to cost. And the inputs for this are our project charter, so the initial high-level cost that we had in mind, the project management plan, and of course our EEFs and OPAs. Well, we're always going to see those, I think, lots and lots of those every process that we see. Expert judgment is the other thing that we're going to see a lot of, and data analysis for our tools and techniques. So alternatives analysis, do we have different ways of managing our cost? And meetings to tie it all together as always. The output for this one is our cost management plan, the process for how we're going to manage cost on our project. Now we've got that, we can estimate the costs and the inputs. So how do we start by estimating our costs? We need our project management plan, project documents, lessons learned, project schedule, and surprise, surprise, it's EEFs and OPAs. Wow, what a surprise seeing them there. And also another surprise, expert judgment from people associated with cost or budgeting in the organization. And then the different estimating methods, of course, analogous, parametric, bottom-up, 3-point estimating, data analysis to tie all that together in our estimates, cost of quality. Now that's a really good one, and again, don't have time to go into that in lots of detail, but cost of quality is a good one to understand. What's the cost of preventing quality issues or catching them before they get to the customer? All of those things. Project management information system, where we house all of that data and information for our project, and decision making, we might vote on how much things cost to get the best outcome there. The outputs we want are our cost estimates themselves, the basis of those estimates, so what did we base those estimates on, and project documents updates. Now, of course, we want to determine the budget itself. So the inputs that we're going to need are our project management plan, project documents, business documents, any agreements in the organization already, and EEFs and OPAs. Expert judgment, so all of that from the right people within the business or the organization or the project. Cost aggregation, where we're taking all of the costs for the work packages, aggregating them up into larger items, features or deliverables, and aggregating those up into an overall project budget. Then we need to analyze that. Management reserves and contingency reserves, that will form part of our budget. And again, go into more detail for that one in the PMP course. Historical information review, so any historical information on past projects for analogous estimating. Funding limit reconciliation, we obviously want to reconcile the budget, the debits and credits, and then financing the budget itself. Where is the money coming from? The outputs that we want are the cost baseline, the approved budget, project funding requirements, maybe there's milestones and they're released at certain times, and project documents updates. Now that we've got our scope, schedule, and cost, we can start looking at quality. So how do we plan quality on our project? We need our project charter, project management plan, project documents, EEFs and OPAs, tools and techniques. Surprise, surprise, it's expert judgment from people within the business, data gathering. We can use benchmarking against other teams or organizations, stuff like that. It's really good stuff. Data analysis, decision making, and that's multi-criteria decision analysis, which is my absolute favorite. Great way to prioritize features in an agile project too. Data representation or mind mapping, which we're becoming pretty familiar with in a roundabout way by doing this particular process. Test and inspection planning, so the acceptance criteria against the requirements and the test cases themselves. And of course, meetings to tie it all together. The outputs we want are our quality management plan, our quality management process. Quality metrics, how do we know when we're successful? Project management plan and project documents updates, and of course, updating that requirements traceability matrix. Now that we've got quality under control, we can start planning the resources on our project. So how do we do that? Well, we're going to need our project charter. We might have a high-level idea of project resources that we had promised to us at the beginning when the project kicked off. The project management plan for quality management plan and scope baseline, the project documents and EEFs and OPAs, as always, seeing a lot of those. And again, expert judgment for the right people at the right time, planning the resources, getting their input and ideas. Data representation, hierarchical charts. We might need a resource breakdown structure. Organizational theory. Oh, now this is amazing. I love this. And again, there's a lot of this in the PMP course, but this is how do we grow our team and how do we get the best psychologically out of our team and make sure that everyone is happy and engaged. Like Hertzberg's theory of motivation, for example, Oichi's theory Z or Z for those in America. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. Meetings, as always, to tie it all together. And the outputs are our resource management plan, which is our resource management process, exactly right. The team charter, so how is our team going to work together? Project document updates, and these ones are extras that I think I have added inadvertently, but we want to update assumptions and risks as always. Now that we've planned resource management, we can start estimating the resources that we need for our project. And you'll remember the estimating techniques that we have, but first we need our project management plan, project documents, EEFs and OPAs, and the tools and techniques, expert judgment from the right people, and then bottom-up estimating, analogous estimating, parametric estimating, and all of those things can help us estimate those resources. Data analysis to analyze the alternatives that we need, and then all of that information on our project is in our project management information system. And that could be a system like SharePoint or Jira, or it could be Microsoft Project, many different things, whatever that system is. It's always different. Meetings, as always, to tie it all together. The outputs are our resource requirements, and we've got the basis of those estimates. The resource breakdown structure, like we said, which is that hierarchical chart, we're going to update the activity attributes, assumptions, and any lessons that we learn along the way. Now that we've done that, we want to plan the communications on our project for all of those stakeholders and communicating how things are going. The project charter, project management plan, project documents, EEFs and OPAs will all form an input here. Tools that we're going to use are expert judgment, communication requirements analysis. So how do people prefer to be communicated with? Communication technology, maybe it's phones, maybe it's over the internet, maybe it's messaging tools. Communication models. Now, this is a really good thing. Many different ways to communicate and many different things to be aware of when we communicate. So there's a whole bunch of great information on that one. Communication methods, interpersonal and team skills, data representation, and of course, meetings to tie it all together. The outputs that we want here are our communications management plan, project management plan updates, and project documents updates, because we might be updating our stakeholder engagement plan and how they want to be communicated with. Now we can plan risk management. So planning risk management, what are we going to need as an input? The project charter for any high-level risks, project management plan, project documents, EEFs and OPAs as always. Surprise, surprise, for tools and techniques we're going to need expert judgment, data analysis for stakeholders and the risks that they might come up with, and meetings to tie it all together. Outputs is the risk management plan or the risk management process. So that's what we've got there. Then we can identify all of the risks, and we do that by brainstorming with our team. So we need our project management plan for our risk management approach, for example, project documents for any issues or cost estimates or things that might bring risks to our project. Any agreements that we've made within the business already, project documentation, EEFs and OPAs to help us identify risks. We're going to need the right expert judgment from the right people. Maybe that's people within the business who know the product well or the area well. Maybe it's data engineers or software engineers who have that information that can help us identify risks. Data gathering, brainstorming with those people, data analysis, doing root cause analysis, and facilitating prompt lists. So we might have categories of risks that will help us, or they're prompting us for risks that we might have, and of course meetings to tie it all together. The outputs that we have is the risk register itself, the list of risks and their categorization. Risk report, which we send out to stakeholders on a regular basis just to make sure that they're up to date on any project risks, and the project documents updates, any assumptions or issues that come up along the way. Performing qualitative risk analysis is the subjective method. So this is where we usually look at our risks by the impact and likelihood, and then we determine how severe those risks are going to be. We're going to need our project management plan, project documents, EEFs and OPAs as part of that. expert judgment from the right people, data gathering, data analysis, interpersonal and team skills, risk categorization, which is what we said here, the impact and the likelihood, data representation, we put that into a probability and impact matrix, and meetings to tie all of those things together as always. The outputs we want are project documents updates. Now, quantitative risk analysis is where we gather lots and lots of data to give more information to the risks that are happening. That could be financial data, or it could be data on the weather. For example, I've seen in some insurance-based companies on global warming, big simulations and Monte Carlo analysis this is. We're going to need our project management plan, project documents, EEFs and OPAs as always, expert judgment, data gathering, interpersonal and team skills, representations of uncertainty, and data analysis. All of those things are for our tools and techniques. Representations of uncertainty, that could be things like a histogram. So now we see where the majority of the risks are coming from in this area here, just as one example. Outputs, the project documents updates. We're going to need to update our risk report as we send that out on a regular basis to our stakeholders. Now, once we've got all of that information with risk, we can plan the risk responses. How are we going to respond? We're going to need our project management plan, project documents, EEFs and OPAs as always. The tools and techniques, surprise, surprise, it's our expert judgment from the right people. Data gathering, interpersonal and team skills, strategies for threats, strategies for opportunities, contingent response strategies, so any leftover risks or alternative risk strategies, strategies for overall project risk, data analysis, might include cost-benefit analysis on our responses, and decision making, my favorite multi-criteria decision analysis. The outputs we want here, we might have some change requests as we manage our risks and their responses, project management plan updates and project documents updates. All of these things can be updated. Schedule, cost, scope might change as we respond to risks, and they change the way we approach our project. Now, lastly, in planning, we can plan procurement management. This is where we're needing a vendor to come on board. And we could start with our project charter because we might already have allocated a vendor or gotten an idea of a vendor that's going to be required for our project. Business documents, project management plan, project documents, like any milestones that we need, project team assignments if we've already assigned a vendor, requirements documentation so the vendor can see what they're going to need to deliver, and EEFs and OPAs. Expert judgment, I bet you weren't expecting that one. Data gathering, data analysis, source selection analysis is how we're going to approve the vendors. And so we've got our criteria, and then the vendors just need to meet that criteria in order to be approved. And meetings to tie all of that together. Outputs are our procurement management plan, which is our procurement management process, exactly. The strategy for procurement, bid documents, so request for information, request for quote, request for proposal, procurement statement of work, so that's the list of items that we're delivering, source selection criteria, so how we're approving any vendors, what's our source selection criteria, make or buy decisions, independent cost estimates, so we have an idea if something is worthwhile or not, change requests, project document updates, and organizational process assets updates that we might come across. Oh, lastly as well, we're going to need to plan stakeholder engagement, where we need our project charter for any initial stakeholders, project management plan, project documents, any organizational agreements that are already in place, EEFs and OPAs. The tools and techniques are expert judgment, data gathering, data analysis, decision-making, data representation, and meetings as always. Outputs is the stakeholder engagement plan itself, which is our stakeholder engagement process. So now we can move on to executing a project. So actually doing the work, directing and managing our project work. What we're going to need is our project management plan, because this is how we've planned everything out. Project documents like our changelog, project communications, and approved change requests for any changes that go along, EEFs and OPAs. We will need expert judgment as we execute our project, and we'll need all of the information from our project management information system. Again, could be Confluence, SharePoint, could be anything. Jira, could be Monday.com, could be Asana, could be anything that your company is using, could be Excel even. Meetings to tie it all together. And the outputs, we want the deliverables themselves. This is where we're delivering the project work performance data. So how is everything tracking? The raw data. Issue log for any issues that come up. Change requests for any changes that need to be made. Project management plan updates. Project document updates. And organizational process assets updates. As we're executing the project, we're going to manage project knowledge. So the project management plan, project documents, and the deliverables themselves will all form an input into managing our project knowledge, because as we learn things, we need to make sure that is captured. Tools and techniques, expert judgment as always. Knowledge management, so how are we managing the knowledge on our project? Information management, how are we managing information? Where are we capturing all of those things? And interpersonal and team skills, so facilitation and leadership to gather and extract all of those lessons. The outputs that we want here are our lessons learned register, project management plan updates, and organizational process assets updates. Managing quality. So to manage quality as we execute our project, the inputs that we're going to need are our project management plan. So again, this is our quality management process that we have already planned out. Project documents, lessons or quality metrics, risks that come up, and organizational process assets for templates or tools. Tools for managing quality are checklists, data analysis, alternatives analysis, decision making, multi-criteria decision analysis, data representation, and again, lots more information in the full course on PMP that you can definitely go into or find information separately on those things and how to use those tools and templates. Auditing, designing for X, which is designing for a particular idea like ease of use, for example, or ease of assembly. Problem solving, quality improvement methods. So can we improve our quality process and the quality of the item itself? The outputs that we want are quality reports, the test and evaluation documents, so the outputs of our testing, change requests if we've got defects that need to go back through and be worked on again, project management plan updates, and project documents updates. Now that we're executing our project, we can acquire the resources, and the inputs that we're going to need are our project management plan, our resource management plan, if you could guess, project documents, EEFs, and OPAs. The tools and techniques that we can use are decision making, interpersonal and team skills, so multi-criteria decision making or negotiation as we negotiate the gathering of resources with our business or with the business that we're working with, pre-assignment if people have already been assigned to the project, and virtual teams if we're working around the country with many different teams in different areas. We might work virtually or online. The outputs that we have are the physical resource assignments, so that's the materials, and the project team assignments, so that's the people, resource calendars, when are people available, change requests, project management updates, project documents updates, EEF and OPA updates. Now that we've acquired our team, we can develop the team. And the inputs that we want are our project management plan, project documents, EEFs and OPAs. So the resource management plan was our process for how we were going to do this. We can now refer to that process. Lessons learned that we've learned along the way, and the team charter for how we're working with our team. Tools and techniques that we're going to use include co-locating our team, so getting everyone together in the same space so that we can communicate quickly and easily. Virtual teams, if we are geographically dispersed, communication technology, messaging tools, telephone tools, video conferencing tools, conflict management, influencing, motivating, negotiating, and team building. All of that we'll need to manage conflict within our team as we develop them. Recognition and rewards for the right things, training our team to help them grow, individual and team assessments to see how they are traveling, and of course, meetings to tie all of those things together as our project manager. As you can tell, we spend a lot of time in meetings by the looks of it. Lots of meetings in all those tools and techniques. The outputs that we've got are the team performance assessments. So How are we assessing our team? How are they going? Change requests if we need to make a change. Project management plan updates to any resources. Project documents updates. Enterprise environmental factors and OPA updates that we might need. Once we start developing our team, we can manage the team as we go through our project. With the project management plan, project documents, work performance reports, team performance assessments that we've gathered, EEFs and OPAs, and of course the process comes from our resource management plan. We're going to need tools like interpersonal and team skills for conflict management. The outputs include change requests for changes, project management plan updates, project documents updates, and environmental factors updates. So we might update our process, the resource management plan, any issues that come about, and project team assignments if people need to be assigned differently or reassigned. Managing communications on our project as we execute our project will include needing our project management plan for our communications process, project documents for issues or changes, quality report, risk report for risks, work performance reports. How is our project going? We'll need to communicate that to our stakeholders. EEFs and OPAs. Tools and techniques. We'll need communication technology. So messaging, emails, reporting. How are we actually communicating? Communication methods. So face-to-face or different methods that we're using. Communication skills. So it could be non-verbal or presentations. How do we gather feedback? Project management information system, where we gather all of our project information. Project reporting, we can use that to report and then gather information for future communications. Interpersonal and team skills, and of course, meetings to tie all of that together. Project communications, project management plan updates, project documents updates, and organizational process assets updates are all part of the outputs as we manage communications on our project. Implementing the risk responses, we would need to look at the project management plan, so our risk management plan or our risk management process, project documents, lessons learned, risks and risk reports that we might need as we're implementing those risk responses, and organizational process assets for any existing templates for managing risk responses, expert judgment, influencing, and data from the project management information system are all tools that we can use. Change requests for any changes that come about as we implement those risk responses, and project documents updates, so the issues log for issues, risk register, and the risk report as we send that out. Executing a project, we're going to conduct the procurements for any third-party vendor. We'll need our procurement management plan as part of our project management plan. Project documents, procurement documentation, so that could be our proposals, our request for proposal, our statement of work, source selection criteria, all of those things. Seller proposals, we gather them back from the sellers and then we can make a decision on who to proceed with. And EEFs and OPAs. Tools and techniques, we're going to need our expert judgment from the right people within the organization. Advertising, so can we get more sellers to give us requests for information or requests for proposal? Bidder conferences, can we get everyone on the same page at the same time? Data analysis and interpersonal and team skills. The outputs that we're looking for are the selected sellers themselves, any agreements that we have or will need to make, change requests if we're changing the vendor or the timing, project management plan updates, project documents updates, and organizational process assets updates. Right at the very end of executing a project, we're managing stakeholder engagement. So we'll need our stakeholder engagement plan, project documents, EEFs and OPAs. Tools and techniques include expert judgment, communication skills to ensure that we're engaging in the right way, interpersonal and team skills, ground rules within our project, and meetings as always. Change requests if we need to change things in the way that we manage with our stakeholders. Project management plan updates and project documents updates are all part of the outputs for managing stakeholder engagement. And now we can start moving on to monitoring and controlling. So now we're just controlling the project work before we finally close it off. So the inputs that we're going to need are our project management plan, as always, different aspects, project documents, project work performance information that we've gathered as our project moves along and to see if we're on track or off track. Agreements, enterprise environmental factors, and organizational process assets. Tools and techniques we're going to need are expert judgment from the right people, data analysis, decision making, and meetings to tie it all together. Outputs, work performance reports. So we turn that information into reports that go to executives or stakeholders in our project. Change requests, project management plan updates, and project documents updates. So for any issues or cost forecasts that we need to be updating. We also want to perform integrated change control, which is our change control process. We're going to need our project management plan, project documents, work performance reports, change requests, EEFs, and OPAs. Tools and techniques we're going to need, surprise, surprise, expert judgment, change control tools, data analysis, decision making, and meetings. Outputs that we're going to want are the approved change requests themselves, project management plan updates, and project documents updates. So the change log we can update with the outputs of those change requests. Also part of monitoring and controlling is validating that scope. If you remember, that's with our project sponsor or the customer, whoever's receiving the scope and the completed deliverable. We will need our project management plan, project documents, the verified deliverables. That means they've been verified with our quality assurance process, work performance data about our project, and that includes the quality process data. Inspections, so we've inspected the product and we're happy with it. Decision making, the outputs we have here once it's been signed off are our accepted deliverables, the work performance information, change requests if we have any defects that need to go back and be worked on again, project document updates. We want to control scope as we're going along for any changes. And of course, we're going to need our project management plan, project documents, work performance data from all of our project work, and organizational process assets. The tools and techniques we're going to need are data analysis for trend or variance analysis, and the outputs will include that work performance information. Remember, the data turns into information and that goes into reports. So that's how it goes there. Change requests for any changes, project management plan updates if we need to update our scope baseline or the scope management plan, and project documents updates for any lessons learned, and of course our requirements traceability matrix. Controlling the schedule as that goes along if there are any changes for change control, where the inputs are the project management plan for the schedule management plan in our process, project documents, work performance data, and OPAs. Tools and techniques include data analysis, the critical path method if that changes or we need to adjust our schedule. The project management information system is where we get all of our project information from. Resource optimization, if we need to change or shuffle resources around to get the best outcome. Leads and lags for bringing things forward or moving them back. And schedule compression, which is fast tracking or schedule crashing and throwing resources and money at the schedule to make it go faster. Work performance information is what comes out of this. Schedule forecasts, so we'll see if things are going on track. Change requests if we need to make a change. Project management plan updates to our schedule baseline or cost baseline, and project documents updates. Controlling costs is another thing that we're going to need to do. And of course, the inputs to this will include our project management plan and project documents, as always. Project funding requirements that we had said in our plan, the work performance data for how we're tracking, so we'll compare these two things together to see if we need to make a change. Organizational process assets as well for any templates, expert judgment for the people in the organization that we need to talk to about controlling costs, data analysis, to complete performance index. This is part of our variance analysis and earned value management, which we go into much more detail in the full course for project management. Project management information system, where we gather all of our project information. Work performance information is an output. Cost forecasts is an output. Change requests can be an output. Updating our project management plan and project documents can also be an output of that particular process. Controlling the quality. This is where we've gone through a quality process and maybe we need to keep that quality under control. So how do we do that? Project management plan we'll need as an input. Project documents. Approved test cases. So we're running different test cases to see if the quality is there and it can be approved. Deliverables. So we'll need those deliverables to test. The work performance data, EEFs and OPAs. Tools and techniques include data gathering. And hey, we haven't got expert judgment in here, which is amazing. So I think that's the first one. Data analysis, inspection. So we're inspecting those deliverables. Testing and product evaluations, evaluating the product. Data representation. So as we get the information, we want to show it in a way that our stakeholders will understand. Maybe a histogram, maybe scatter diagrams, and meetings to usually to showcase that information if we need to, or get decisions. Quality control measurements. So that's the measurements, what we were aiming for with quality. Is it 90% pass rate or whatever that is? Verified deliverables. So now we're verifying them so that the project sponsor can validate them and approve them and sign off on those deliverables like we saw before. Work performance information, change requests, project management updates, and project documents updates are all the outputs for controlling quality. Controlling our resources and keeping that under control. The inputs, can you guess? Project management plan, project documents, work performance data from our project to see if we're on track or off track. Any agreements that we've made with the resources and gaining those resources from the business. Organizational process assets for any templates and ways of work. Tools and techniques that we're going to use are data analysis. So cost-benefit analysis, for example, trend analysis, performance reviews on our people, problem solving, interpersonal and team skills. We might need to negotiate and influence to get the right resources. Project management information system is where all of our project information comes from and goes into. Work performance information is an output. So how are our resources performing? Change requests if we are off track. Project management plan updates and project documents updates can all be an output of controlling resources. Monitoring communications is part of monitoring and controlling a project. And the inputs, can you guess? Project management plan, exactly. Project documents, work performance data for how our project is tracking, EEFs and OPAs. Expert judgment is something that we'll need as always. Project management information system to get the information for how our project is tracking. Data representation, interpersonal and team skills, and meetings. Again, meetings, one of those things, they are everywhere in our tools and techniques. The outputs we want, same as always when we're controlling a project. We might have change requests, work performance information that we can showcase to other people in reports, and project management plan updates and project documents updates for issues, risks, stakeholder changes. Now we want to monitor the risks on our project and keep them under control if we can. The inputs will be our risk management plan, so our project management plan, project documents for any risk registers or risk reports, work performance data for how we're traveling, and work performance reports for previous reports that we've sent out to our stakeholders. Data analysis, audits, and meetings are all ways that we can monitor those risks and make sure that they are kept under control. And where the outputs that we have are the work performance information. So turning that data into information that we can use to make a decision. Change requests, project management plan updates, project document updates, and organizational process assets updates. Now we want to control procurements when we're controlling and monitoring our project. Can you guess? We're going to need our procurement management plan as an input for our project management plan. Project documents, agreements for any procurements, procurement documentation, which is our statement of work, any requests for proposals, sellers that we've got, the vendor selection criteria, approved change requests as we go along, work performance data, EEFs and OPAs, tools and techniques, surprise, surprise, it's expert judgment. Claims administration is if the vendor is doing something and we don't like it or we don't agree that it's correct, but they don't agree that it's wrong, then it will go to a claim. Data analysis, inspection and audits, because we're going to need to inspect and audit the things that the vendor does and make sure that it's correct. The outputs will be closing that procurement, the work performance information to see if it was on track and what they delivered, procurement documentation updates, change requests if it was off track, project management plan updates, project documents updates, and organizational process assets updates. And monitoring stakeholder engagement is still part of monitoring and controlling a project. So our stakeholder engagement plan, project documents, work performance data, enterprise environmental factors, and organizational process assets as always. And data analysis will be a tool and technique. Decision making, data representation to represent the data on our stakeholders, so stakeholder engagement assessment matrix. Communication skills for feedback or presentations, interpersonal and team skills, meetings with our stakeholders. Outputs for monitoring stakeholder engagement will be our work performance information, change requests, project management plan updates, and project documents updates. And lastly, you made it, closing that project or closing that project phase. How do we do this? We need our project charter. So what did we agree to at the very beginning? Did we meet what we agreed to? The project management plan, project documents. So all of these basis of estimates, the assumption logs, did we meet what we said we were going to do? The accepted deliverables themselves, the business documents, any future agreements, procurement documentation for closed procurements, and OPAs for any ways of working. Expert judgment, data analysis, and meetings will help us in our tools and techniques for closing a project or phase. And the outputs will be project documents updates, the lessons learned, the final service or result or transition. And so that's the end of our project or phase. The final report to just let everyone know how it went and the outcomes, and organizational process assets updates for any things that need to go back into the business. And that is all of those processes and the really nitty-gritty information and detail for those particular process groups in the practice guide. I hope you've enjoyed. It's been a wonderful journey. I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.